Welcome to the Transport and Infrastructure Committee meeting dated the 13th of June 2024. I'd like to advise attendees that the meeting is being webcast and audio recorded. I'd like to welcome committee members, Councillor Young, Mark Hamill, Councillor Hamill, Councillor Tozer and Nick Marshall. And we have visiting Councillor Wilkinson and Councillor Martin and Councillor Curtis and Councillor Fowler. Welcome. Leave of absence. So, first of all, I'd like Councillor Gates is not here, and Councillor O'Neill. So, if I can, well, Councillor Gates has already been given absence of leave. My question is, do I need to move a motion for Councillor Gates? Yeah, we may as well notice it. So, I'll move it. Been noticed, yep. Councillor Tozer. And also Councillor O'Neill. She's given her apologies, so I'm happy to move it. We got a seconder, or does it just need? Correct. Okay, good point. So, Councillor Gates, I move it. Seconder, Councillor Tozer. All in favour? Carry. Perfect. Thank you. Now we'll go to Councillor O'Neill. So I'd like to move, seconded Councillor Tozer. Fantastic. All in favour? Carry. Thank you. So confirmation of minutes, 838, 21st of November 2023, nearly 6 months. Can anyone recall the minutes? I'd like to move it. Councillor Young, Councillor Tozer, all in favour? Carry. Thank you. Conflicts of interest, we have nil. No conflict of interest, thank you. So we'll go to starred items. At the moment, we've currently got starred item 5.1, 6.1, 6.2, 6.3, 6.4, 6.5, 6.6, 6.7, 6.8, 6.9. I have... Would anyone like to unstar any of those? We've got to get through these meetings. Okay, Councillor Martin.
Thank you, Chair. I'm not a voting member, but would love to unstar 6.2 and 6.5.
6.2 and 6.5. Councillor Young.
I wanted to unstar the one about Simpson Road. I received an email, I think we all did, from someone. Just wanted.
Simpson Road is 6.7.
Thank you.
We'll unstar that one. Okay, so we'll move the starred items. So we'll go through them first. 5.1, 6.1, 6.3, 6.4, 6.6, 6.8 and 6.9. Do we have a mover? Councillor Tozer, seconder. Councillor Young, all in favour? Carry. Thank you. We'll move to 6.2. I'd like to pass it to Councillor Martin in relation to this. Is there some questions?
Was there a presentation or not?
No presentation on this one, so it'll just be a discussion.
So, thank you, through Chair. I noted in the agenda there was some really detailed analysis and an extensive work done by city officers. So I was just hoping to obviously not only Burleigh Hill and the dredging and the sand pumping program, but I note that the impacts have been noted that there has been no surf amenity caused. So I just wanted to confirm that is the case of the outcome of the study.
Through the Chair, yes, certainly we can have some discussion. We have Adam and Mark here. So a detailed internal investigation, as you can see, was quite a comprehensive investigation to the petition request. Found no adverse effects, looked at both the dredging, sand bypassing and also the stormwater outfalls. But I can pass over to Adam and he can, unpick some of that more technical element that's been done.
Sorry, just to we've We've just flipped. I'm sorry, through the chair. We've just flipped over on. We're on 6.5. We'll come back to 6.2. That's right. Okay with everyone.
So can I just clarify? We're on item 6.5.
We're on 6.2. My apologies.
And my
6.2.
apologies, I have confused the item. So I've talked to 6.5 when we should be doing 6.2. So I apologise.
You've confused me. Sorry, through the chair.
Sorry, my apologies. I've got it. 6.2.
Through the chair.
Councillor Martin is there.
Okay.
6.2.
6.2. My apologies again. So again, I understand that the state undertook the hydraulic analysis, and there was a report. And so, just confirming, so the city then, on the back of this petition, sought to undertake another analysis. But as I understand it, wasn't a full analysis, but the key elements that is likely pointing to the same outcome. So I was just seeking to confirm that that was the case, and the officer's findings.
Yes, through the chair. These studies have been undertaken by DTMR and their consultants, but I can pass over to officers and Adam, who can unpack some of that information.
Yeah, through the chair, that's correct. 2 studies have been undertaken so far by DTMR, both by reputable, or probably the best in the business on the stormwater front. Any conclusions that we would come to from a modelling standpoint would be very, very similar.
Councillor Martin.
So, and I have read the report, but in summary, to progress to the full second report, I mean, it's essentially ratepayers funding that is going to lead to, in your opinion, the same outcome of the DTMR study. Is that correct?
Very much so, yes. Yep.
Thank you. Any more questions? Councillor Hammer?
Through you, Mr. Chair, to the EGMR officers, but just confirming there's nothing stopping these private residents from engaging a hydraulic expert with their own funds to do a review of the DTMR report.
No, through the chair. That certainly doesn't prohibit them in doing their own independent study, and certainly also engaging further with DTMR if they did have concerns with the study.
And they have also been advised that many of the residents have been given that sort of information and who they could go to sort of arrange that. So,
thank you. Any more questions?
I can move the item.
Move Mark. Councillor Hamill. Second, Councillor Tozer. Want to talk to it? No. Put it to the floor. All in favour? Carry. We now go to 6.5. Councillor Martin.
Thank you. A little deja vu, but again, extensive technical reporting and research undertaken by city officers. So just obviously just seeking to underscore that outcome that the dredging program hasn't affected the surf amenity of Burleigh Heads.
Through the chair, I will pass directly to the officers.
Hi, through the chair, thanks for your inquiry. Just in relation to the findings from this report, significant amount of work was done in relation to the factors that affect surf amenity at Burleigh Heads. That was underscored by the technical report, which underpins the city's surf management plan. The main contributing factor for surf amenity is bar formation at Burleigh Headlands and all of our other point breaks. We ran an analysis, a historical analysis of bar formation at Burleigh Headland, and the findings were that in the period since we've been dredging, there's been no change to the average bar formation at Burleigh Headland. We look to nourish the amount of sand that gets deflected by Tallebudgera retaining wall annually. It's about 30,000 cubic metres, which represents less than 10% of annual south-north sand flow. And the main purpose for that nourishment is asset protection in the corner, which is a vulnerable part of the coastline, and to get that sand back into the longshore drift. So in closing, the recommendation was that we run some further analysis and monitoring of surf amenity moving forward, and we're looking at that at the moment. But the findings were that nourishment from Tallebudgera Creek doesn't have an impact on surf amenity at Burleigh Heads.
Councillor Martin.
Thank you. And through you, Chair, I think one of the reasons for, I suppose, this investigation or the petition was that there was a unique sort of sand deposit in the middle of Burleigh Heads, and as I'm reading the report, there were some contributing factors. But I mean, is that a natural occurrence? Are we likely to see that potentially happen again, and it's not, I suppose, as a result of the dredging?
You're right, through the chair. There was a salient that had formed around First Avenue, so that was part of natural coastal processes. Excuse me. It's important to note that coastal dynamics isn't an exact science. So when we were looking at the nourishment campaign for this year, there was a couple of contributing factors. We had a very high energy year in 2022, and that was followed by a very low energy year in 2023, which left us with additional sand on that beach. And in relation to the deposition area, that salient was considered because to deposit in the northern area of the approved area would have contributed to that salient, and that would have formed an unusual shoreline formation, which is what technical officers wanted to avoid. So the salient was pre-existing before the dredging campaign, and we didn't want to add to that that sandbar effect in the northern area of the deposition area.
Councillor Martin.
Just a comment, Chair. I think the work that's been undertaken and the level of detail, I just wanted to congratulate officers. I think, as a surfer, you want to make sure that surf breaks are protected, but to the level of the detail that was undertaken, I think officers should be congratulated. So thank you.
I'll just ask a question in relation to, with this dredging program, how often do we keep reviewing, obviously, that surf break at that particular point with ongoing dredging? Is there a program, how often we monitor that?
Yeah, so the dredging itself is monitored through the EPA. The location of the nourishment is monitored by city officers, so technical officers, and they're informed by data, so survey data and things like that. It's continually reviewed, so there's no hard and fast rule with the amount of sand that we might deposit in the corner there at Burleigh or that deposition area that we've got to work within. So if we have had a high energy year where we may have lost a lot of sand, then technical officers might look to nourish a little more than they normally would. If you've had a low energy year, the next year they might look at that and say, okay, well, we'll pump a little less sand, or we'll move the location of the sand because we've got adequate protection in that southern corner at Burleigh Heads.
Thank you. Any more questions from the floor? Do we have a mover? Councillor Hammer? Councillor Young? Take the vote. All in favour? Carry. So we'll go to 6.7. I had a meeting with Councillor Gal O'Neill, had some questions in relation to the report, and I'd like to hand it over to Michael. He can give a bit of an update. I know that Councillor Young was going to comment on there, so you're happy to hear first.
Thank you. So in discussions with Councillor O'Neill officers, we spoke about, I guess, the impacts of wildlife vehicle strikes on Simpson Road. It does have the highest vehicle impact rate of any council-owned road in the city. We are also quite constrained, in essence, on doing speed limit reviews by the current legislative requirements and DTMR guidelines. So they are very much, speed limit reviews are very much driven through, guidelines and processes that really look at, more technical aspects around sight distance, geometry, vehicle speed, vehicle behaviours, etc. And the officers undertaking the review found that all of those limits were met. Recommendations on changes to speed limits effectively go through a committee, and that has other members on that committee, and including DTMR and Queensland Police, etc. So it's quite a structured process, and we cannot change speed limits, in an ad hoc manner. Unfortunately, with the current guidelines, there isn't provision to effectively look at, impact on wildlife as one of the drivers for changing speed limits. But we are aware that DTMR have been undertaking a trial on that very matter, where on Tallebudgera Connection Road they're trialling a new system with additional signage and, in essence, daytime and nighttime speed limits. So in conversations with Councillor O'Neill, we looked at a potential to effectively lobby DTMR to see whether Simpson Road could be included in that trial. And that would, I think the current trial has about another 14 months to run thereabouts on Tallebudgera. I'll be able to pass to Renee shortly for more detail. And also, if DTMR will allow us to do that trial, obviously at the end of that trial, and we're not aware of the findings, whether they've been positive or conclusive that it's made a difference, DTMR may then review the guidelines, but at this stage, until the trial is complete. So if there's any further details, questions, I'm happy to pass to Renee, who's come along today as well.
Councillor Young. Yep, thank you.
Thanks, Chairman. And thanks to the Executive General Manager. He's laid it out pretty clearly to us. Simpsons Road does, unfortunately, have the highest rate of animal strikes in the whole city of all of the council roads, and I think it's incumbent upon us to take some action to try to remedy that. We can't control every driver's behaviour or motorist behaviour, but we can certainly influence that, and I appreciate that this work has been done very thoroughly and the report before us is accurate and supportable, but I do think that we should explore other avenues. The EGM's given us an indication that there may be some piggybacking with the Department of Transport on the project they're doing. My mind is taken to the Cassowary coast in the Daintree, where in a forest that obviously has a lot of wildlife that the authorities are keen to protect, they've installed speed bumps at distances of about 200 or 300 or 400 metres, and it really works. It really does slow traffic down. And I'm not sure. I don't know this road, so I'm not speaking from personal knowledge. I did, like other committee members did, get a letter this week from the chief petitioner, so that's why I was keen to raise this and just make it apparent that we're exploring all the opportunities and avenues. So I don't know the road, but I just wondered if we might explore those sorts of alternatives where we're not affecting the speed limit, but we're implementing measures that will physically impact the environment, the road environment, and reduce the speed of the through traffic. I believe it's pretty much just a through route. And I know that speed bumps are pretty unpopular in suburban streets, but for the majority of this, where the wildlife strikes are happening, perhaps it's not a suburban kind of environment, and maybe there's an opportunity to explore that sort of thing further, which comes at a cost, of course, but we have a dedicated budget to try to alleviate these road impacts on wildlife, and we've taken certain action on Arundel, in particular, from my recollection, looking at mitigation of koala impacts. So perhaps we can look a little bit more at the options to remedy the road rather than reduce the speed limit as the single focus. I don't know if the EGM wants to respond, but
I think in this particular...
I'm not trying to put you on the spot.
Yeah, through the chair. So I don't think this will be an appropriate treatment for this particular road. And I might pass to Renee, who can probably more eloquently unpack the drivers for that. Thanks, Renee.
Through the chair. So there is a lot we have done on this road. So we've got large conservation signs, threshold treatments. We have 3 koala vehicle activated signs along the route. We also deploy VMSs during breeding season. And some of the data I've got here, whilst it is the highest strike road in the city since 2022, we haven't, according to the data I've been provided, we haven't had a koala strike on that road. So what's that saying to me is these current interventions that we're putting into place, so the rotating speed awareness devices, the variable message signs. We've also recently done a new treatment, which is green cat's eyes down either side of the road to remind the motorists at night that it is a wildlife area. That data is saying that we are having an impact on this road with the interventions we're doing at the moment.
Well, it's a good response, and I suppose that's what we've got to have our eyes to, is the actual statistics, and I'm not sure what the period of time was that informed the assessment that this was the most vulnerable road, shall we say, for wildlife, but I think it was completed in 2022, and the works were done since then, and the results since are indicating a reduction in animal strikes, and that's pointing to some success. So I'm glad to have had that elaborated in the public forum. Thanks, Chairman.
I have got a change of recommendation that I'd like to put to the committee, but is there any more questions at this stage? No. I'll get the change up if we can. So we've got it there. So the 4 points that the council notes the finding of the speed limit review does not support the change to the current 60-kilometre speed limit on Simpsons Road, as a speed limit review has been endorsed by the local speed management committee. 2, that given Simpson Road has the highest number of recorded koala strikes for the city controlled road, a total of 56 over a 10-year period, the Chief Executive Officer or nominated delegate will request that the Department of Transport and Main Roads approve a trial similar to the current Tallabudger Connection Road, Koala Trial, on Simpson Road, which would enable a lower night time speed, that a further speed review be undertaken for Simpson Road if the Department of Transport and Main Roads update the Queensland Road Safety Technical User Volumes Guide to Speed Management to include amended guidelines in relation to setting the speed limits where wildlife activity, and that a petitioner be advised of the Council's decision. Got a seconder? Councillor Young?
Can I ask a question?
Question?
Just come to mind.
Sousa?
How many crashes would have been sufficient for the speed limit advisory group to recommend a reduction in speed? Like, we obviously haven't, 56 koalas being hit over 10 years seems like 6 koalas a year. It's quite a lot of koalas. If they were counted as crashes, would it have resulted in a different recommendation?
Through the chair, it's not reliant on crashes solely, so that's part of the calculation. So it's quite a technical calculation that takes into consideration the geometry of the road, the curves, the number of crashes. So it's one part of the risk rating in the calculations. So I couldn't tell you off the top of my head exactly what the number is, but it's not the be-all and end-all of setting a speed limit.
Maybe I didn't get it, but did we actually get a figure for the amount of crashes?
Sorry, through the chair, just bear with me a second. I've got the review here. So there was one head-on, one off-carriageway, and another off-carriageway hit object. So there were 3 crashes that were used in the analysis for the speed limit review.
Over what period?
It's generally a 5-year period.
Yeah. Sorry, so 3 crashes were reported on during that period, 2018 to 2023.
Yeah.
I mean, it occurs to me if we counted those 56 koala strikes as crashes, we might have resulted in a different outcome. But obviously, that's not how the process works. is there maybe something we could add to suggest that if koalas are actually important to us, then maybe we should count them as crashes? Is there a way we could provide that sort of feedback to the system?
Through the chair, the amended resolution in essence allows us to be part of the trial, and part of the element or the outcomes of that trial may influence DTMR in amending the guidelines to potentially recognise wildlife impacts. Right. So the pathway is to amend the DTMR guidelines and the relevant legislative constraints, and the trial is a pathway to assessing whether these different treatments, etc., are effective, and that in essence gives a recommended treatment and would open up consideration of wildlife.
Okay. And it sounds like the amended motion we have is kind of what I'm getting at in my head, loosely. It's great.
And so would this trial help us influence some of those changes?
Through the chair, it will depend on the outcomes. So the DTMR trial on Tallebudgera Connection Road is well underway, and I think, Renee, it's about 14 months left to run, thereabouts.
Through the chair, I believe they've just extended it 18 months, so to the middle of next year.
So if DTMR were open to us including Simpson Road, we'd run a similar length trial, and then at the end of that we'd have some hard data and real evidence to assess these changes, which may, as I said, influence the potential change to the guidelines.
Is Tallebudgera Connection Road, through the chair, a state road or a council road? It's a state road. So this would be a unique circumstance where TMR, allows us to add a council road to...
It's a collaborative approach between a local government and state on environmental impacts, and wildlife.
Okay. Any more questions? We'll take the vote.
Oh, are we able to speak on the matter?
Sorry, yes. Councillor Young, would you like to speak?
Thanks, Chairman. Just briefly, I think the matter's been well explored, and I think we are mindful of our obligations and proper representation of public interest in protecting wildlife as best as we can, and I think the situation is benefited by the measures that have been implemented within 2 years ago, and that's effectively helped reduce the incidence of animal strikes, and that's what we want. Hopefully the trial that the DTMR is doing and then our subsequent trial will identify other measures that we can implement, because I do think that there is a body of public interest in the welfare of our wildlife. It's quite strong now, at a strongest point that it has been in the last couple of decades. And the more we can do to actively protect our precious wildlife, that I'm sure that it'll be well received by the community. Thanks.
Anyone else like to speak for?
I wouldn't mind speaking against, but I'll probably vote for. Is that okay?
For? Against?
Yeah. I think these rules are terrible. I think hitting a koala is actually a crash. And I think young drivers and older drivers, and I think it is a crash. And I think the fact that we're not counting striking a koala, an endangered species, a crash, I think it's a wrong approach. And I appreciate it's not only council that's got that view, but TMR and council together, if we're deadly serious about stopping, wildlife strikes, particularly koala strikes, we just need to change the way we interpret the rules. These rules are here for us to interpret, and I'm saddened that we haven't said that striking a koala is a crash. I appreciate no one died and no one ran off the road, but 56 koalas died, and I think that's a bit bad. The koalas are an endangered species. It's something we really care about, and I think we should change the way we interpret the rules. And and I think I actually think we have the authority to do so. It is our road. I think this consistently, I see us as an organisation apply the rules to prevent us slowing cars down in places where strikes and crashes happen. And I've had a similar set of circumstances come up around schools, where it's like, well, no, the cars need to move faster to collect a road, and I think we make the rules. This council makes the rules that determine where speed limits happen on council roads, and whilst we work in partnership with the DTMR, and we work with the RACQ and work with police, and this chamber has the opportunity to to take a much harder line on whether 56 koalas over 10 years matters and whether people should just drive slower on that road. Frankly, I think that dropping the speed limit by 10 kilometres an hour would mean that less koalas die, and that is important. Yeah, that's how I feel about it. So I'm probably going to support the motion, but I think it's a rubbish rule and we should change the rule.
Yep. Thank you. Do you want to close?
And in closing, I'll agree with you entirely. I think that the problem is the crash data is not collected by us, it's collected by the police, and there are certain legislative provisions about what gets reported and recorded, and animal strikes don't necessarily get recorded. They're not in the system. So we do rely upon volunteers across the city, and no doubt the people who signed this petition would be some of them, but volunteers with Wildcare and agencies like that report the incidents, and they're registered in our own system. So we do have access to that material that's helped inform the city in its evaluation of roads with high volumes or high incidence of animal strikes. So we're getting around that by virtue of assistance from the broader community. And I think in our own evaluations that's taken into account, but not in the evaluation that we don't control, which is this one about the speed limit. And I would love the speed limit to be 50 or 40 on a road like this, day and night. And I think that would make a lot of sense and deliver real outcomes. But I think that we're constrained by an entity that we don't control, that we're just a contributor to. Am I right?
Yeah, that's correct. The DTMR guidelines are effectively underpinned by legislation. There are legal aspects around the creation of enforceable speed limits, and I guess the approach recognising the value of endangered species like koalas is unfortunately the pathway that is both illegal, keeps us effectively aligning with those guidelines, but also gives us the opportunity, I guess, to advocate for a change.
Look, I'd just like to add that I think this does give an opportunity, hopefully, to add this to the trial. Hopefully, it does help us to influence some state legislations. A life is a life, whether it's animal or human. I think it's important that we do take all animal incidents seriously. So hopefully this change of recommendation will help towards this particular road being part of a trial that can hopefully make some future changes. So we'll take the vote. All in favour? Carry. Thank you. So we'll go on to 6.10. I think we've got a presentation for 6.10 in relation to the autonomous vehicle trial phase 2 update.
Through the chair. So this item relates to the outcomes of an autonomous vehicle trial, and the council effectively requested officers to investigate a phase 2 trial, and we'll run through the presentation today on some of the outcomes and some of the risks and benefits around a phase 2 trial.
Yeah. So, good afternoon. Through the chair, today's presentation is to provide an outcome of the AV Phase 2 investigations. Following the recommendation of the previous resolution, to proceed with a Phase 2 trial, council support is required. And although today's presentation is not recommending we proceed, I will be providing an update on the investigations which have taken place to date and why we have made this recommendation. I'll start with providing some background on what an AV is. As a high level, the Society of Automotive Engineers defines autonomous vehicles with 6 levels, ranging from no automation to full automation. If a phase 2 trial were to proceed, it would be to trial operations of a level 4 to 5 vehicle. The phase 1 trial operated in a level 3 to level 4 state of automation. To recap the findings which were presented in the previous resolution and noted in recommendation 2, City partnered with RACQ, who provided the vehicle at no cost. The vehicle did target level 4 automation, however, it generally operated in level 3 with some level 4 capacity. The vehicle itself was a 6-seater electric vehicle. It recharged overnight in a shed. The maximum speed was 18 kilometers per hour. It operated during the daytime between 11 a.m. and 3 p.m. At all times, there was a chaperone on board and did require chaperone intervention for some of the complex movements. The goal of the phase 1 was to provide an understanding on how autonomous vehicle technology worked, to complement our existing PT services and to be used in a first mile, last mile arrangement. We were trying to identify changes if there were changes required to engineering and road design practices. The third component was sentiment of the Gold Coast community and how the community actually felt about this technology being out on the roads. So for the councillors who aren't aware, the trial itself was conducted in Main Beach. There was 9 months of operation between March and December 2022, which was 214 days. Passengers travelled for free on this service. It was a 2.4 kilometre route with 7 stops and 30-minute circuit times. Across the trial itself, there was 3,700 passengers partaked. Overall, community was surveyed across the trial. Most, if not all, passengers felt safe on the vehicle, and it was overall well received by the community. Some of the learnings that we took away from phase 1 was that a faster vehicle would improve the level of service and reduce traffic delays, and a more frequent, reliable service was desired. Some other things was to explore technology advancements with interfacing with some of the infrastructure, say the traffic signals around the area, and integrating more broadly into PT services. The last primary factor was to reduce reliance on the chaperone. The learnings from phase 1 formed the basis of the aims for phase 2, that being no chaperone, higher operating speeds, vehicle to infrastructure communication, increased environment complexity, some nighttime operations, and continuing with the first mile, last mile usage. To understand what was available, and from recommendation 3 of the previous resolution, city officers undertook an international market sounding with the following outcomes. So 24 companies were engaged, 9 responses received, 4 of those being vehicle manufacturers. Although not part of the process, there was a post-offer response as well from a vehicle manufacturer. Overall, the responses concluded that it would be at significant cost to the city to proceed with any of the options. Not all of the aims would have been met. For some of them, very similar operating conditions to phase 1, and there's still a lot of advancement that needs to occur with the technology. From this, we concluded it was not value for money for the city to proceed at this stage. which is as per recommendation 3 of our report. Furthermore, the approvals process for a level 4 to 5 trial is expected to be extremely lengthy, with up to 24 months, depending on whether the vehicle had been trialled previously in Australia. And that's in conjunction with currently the National Transport Commission is undertaking consultation to advise on new Commonwealth law, which will define responsibility on the entity during level 4-5 operations. For us to be proactive in this space and in the interest of providing value to the city, we are continuing to broaden our investigations of the technology that AVs make up, which is intelligent transport systems, for which AVs are one of. So for those that don't know, ITS is the application of information and communications technology for the management of the transport system. So I've got a bit of a picture there. Essentially, all the technology on the AV, the sensors, that's part of what's called ITS. It encompasses the technology, the data, the systems, the telecommunications. It's an umbrella term that we use in the industry. So what we're doing about that is the advancement of ITS does present the city with significant opportunities, and we have been trying to capitalise on those opportunities for a number of years through a range of different projects. So that does include improving how we model and the data used in our modelling, using our cloud platforms to better report on and get better quality data, partnering with industry. So there have been a few artificial intelligence trials looking at improving algorithms, trialing new technology, so drone capture, some of the LiDAR, radar, way in motion, and improving our traffic signals. Overall, what this brings back to is that although we are recommending at this stage not to proceed with a phase 2 trial, we are continuing to monitor global autonomous vehicle trends and broader ITS initiatives. And we're recommending to come back in 12 months' time. Thank you.
Questions, Councillor Hamill?
I guess I'm wondering why we're coming back in 12 months' time. So why that needs to be even here. Why have that called out like that?
Through the chair, the only point, Councillor Hamill, was effectively with the rate of advancing technology. We thought an annual review in this space may be of interest to council, and certainly with the ITS space as a whole, there is some globally some fast-moving technology. So that was the intent.
Can I just ask a couple of questions? As local council, we did the trial. I believe Redlands did it. How many councils are doing it, and how much does state government play in this trial space overall in the state?
So when we conducted the market sounding at the time, there'd been 25 autonomous vehicle shuttle trials. So there have been a lot of councils involved. For the most part, the state is driving autonomous vehicle development, being TMR, through their CAVI project. The intent of that Commonwealth law was a decision from the different transport ministers to slow things down and make sure safety is paramount.
And a follow-up question, we're obviously talking about coming back 12 months' time, but whereabouts are we monitoring this type of technology locally, overseas, and what does that look like?
Yeah, so we do have what's called our ITS master plan, where we're making sure we're abreast of different technology advancements. So the team that I'm in, Network Intelligence and Transport Systems, one of our key components is to keep abreast of ITS and how technology is changing and evolving over the years.
Okay. Councillor Martin?
Just, thank you, Chair. Question on the chaperone interventions. Were any of those sort of safety related, i.e. not stopping for pedestrians, or were they more around navigating vehicles? Just interested if there were any public safety interventions.
For the most part, the AV was actually safer than general drivers.
Great answer.
There was 2 incidents where the AV was hit by another car, and each time it was the human in the other car that was at fault. For the most part, I think there was close to 430 emergency stops, generally ranging from being overtaken and external factors, sticks, leaves, getting across the sensors.
The reduced speed did help reduce car speed down Tedder Avenue, which was a positive outcome for a lot of concerns of people speeding down there. But Councillor Tozer.
Sorry, how fast does it go, sorry?
18 kilometres per hour.
18 kilometres per hour.
And that's part of the approval process. Through the chair. That is part of the approval process. So the vehicle itself could go at higher speeds, but was not permitted.
Is there an application for this? Like, do we learn anything about this that could apply itself to a non-road setting? Like, is there... I'm trying to think, the pathway between Nerang train station and People First Stadium... obviously it gets trafficked a lot, but there's actually quite a large off-road pathway. And I'm trying to think, is there an application for what we learnt here to move groups of people in a way that is not... Obviously, we move this on... I'm assuming this operated on the road.
Yep.
So, yeah, is there any application that would make sense for that sort of thing? Sorry? Yeah, I'm just interested... Like, we've obviously said no more, didn't work. $3,700 people used it. But, you know, we're not recommending it. What I'm trying to think of is if the RACQ is interested in partnering with us, is there another application that we can where we can use it where it actually does make sense?
So through the chair. So for phase 2, we did look at a number of different options. One of them was to use that pathway. The problem is then you're displacing pedestrians who are using the pathway as well. But we could take that on notice.
Yeah,
I think it's something to take on notice if we're reviewing in 12 months' time. I think it's something that we can.
I mean, only 6 passengers. I get that it's not a large people moving option. I'm just trying to think of another application where it could make sense.
Any more questions?
Sorry, through the chair. Just to add to that, RACQ have since relinquished the vehicle, so their contract with Easy Mile expired, and it's been donated to one of the universities for further research without support by Easy Mile.
Right. That's a good outcome.
Any more questions? Because I'm happy to move. Second, Councillor Hamill.
I don't need to report back in 12 months if it's just to tell us we're still monitoring. Like, if there's nothing substantive, because it says 12 months, which forces you to bring a report back.
Yep.
I nearly prefer that wasn't there, and it's just when you have something to update us on, then you come back to us, which might be 6 months or it might be 6 years. I don't mind. Just by having 12 months there, it forces you to do work that maybe you don't need to do. So I would nearly propose a change recommendation to drop the 12 months and just cut it off after initiatives.
At a later date. Just change it instead of in approximately 12 months, so at a later date.
I'm happy to make the change. So are you asking to... Let's see. So at a later date. I'm comfortable with that one if you're comfortable. Anything? Councillor Hammer? That's fine. You sure? Happy with that? Like to second it? Second, Councillor Hamill. Yep, thank you. I will quickly talk to it. The trial was in Main Beach. I think it's great that the city is monitoring this type of technology. We know it's moving rapidly. Taking it into the city was a trial that I think we were able to take learnings. Obviously, there was a lot of support for it. Obviously, there was some community impacts because of the speed of the trial. I think it was a positive trial in most cases. And I think as a city, we need to be ensuring that we are keeping up to speed in modern technology, particularly on our roadways. So the trial was effective, and obviously when we feel the timing is right to re-engage in a trial, it's important that it comes back to us moving forward. So would you like to take the vote? All in favour? Against? Carry. Thank you. So now we're going to move to 7.1, review of the mowing contract. I believe this was going to come back to GAF. It was determined that it would need to come to this committee. So it is obviously on grey paper, confidential, but you might just want to explain the change.
Yeah, through the chair, there was a GB item, I think, raised through GAF, and the resolution coming back to the appropriate committee in the new TMI charter. It comes back to this committee.
Yeah, my memory was it didn't. It just said whatever committee was
the appropriate committee. You're right, Councillor. So we have Michael here today.
So do we need to go into?
We will be going into closed. Yes.
Okay. So we've got a motion. We need to close the Local Government Act at consideration of the following reasons. This will be for commercial and confidential. For going to commercial and confidential.
I understand that, but can I just check that the only part that's commercial and confident is the figures on page 8? Or is there other stuff that is deemed commercial and confident?
Yeah, there are through the chair. There are a number of aspects in the report that will be redacted. This is an active procurement process, so where we're looking at comparisons around figures, and certainly in the report itself, there are some items that are at this point in time are not public.
So, Councillor Patterson.
Sorry, and maybe I think I'm on the same thinking as Councillor Hamill if he wants to finish his point first. Did you have something else you want to say on that?
My question was going to be to the EGM, could this report have been written differently, so possibly the parts that had to be in confidential could have been on an attachment and the remainder of the discussion being open? So figures and the figures in the confidential parts were attachment 1, and then the rest of it could have been in open?
Through the chair, potentially, but a lot of the core of the report is effectively comparisons. Obviously, there's commercial elements. There's also some of the changes, and I guess poor learning opportunities, shall we say, from the current contract. So, in our review, we believe this was the best approach, but happy to take advice.
Councillor Patterson.
Thank you, Chair. I think that this is a matter that's of a concern to a lot of residents, and it's been raised to a lot of councillors. So I think maybe even if there's some question or summary that we can do in open before we get into the detail, or we do it on the other side. I don't know.
Yeah, I'm comfortable. It's more, I'm just interested in the report that's been presented that
okay.
We've taken a recommendation to go into close, so I'll take the officer's advice on that, but it's during open, happy to ensure
okay. And then we'll do it after that. Okay, thanks.
I'm happy to move. Do I have a seconder? Councillor Hamill, all in favour? Motion moved. We're live streaming off. Back on. Welcome back, everyone. We've just been discussing the upcoming mowing contract. It's obviously confidential, so we're very limited to what we can say. It's very important for our city that we maintain and look after our parks, and this contract's really important that we maintain those high levels moving forward. So the office gave a great presentation. There's been some great discussion in the space, but I'd like to now accept a move for Councillor Patterson, seconder Peter Young. If we can open, I'll over to Councillor.
It's going to make it hard.
Change that.
I'm so sorry.
Good pickup. Good pickup.
Councillor Taylor.
We'll go Counts.
Councillor Marshall was wanting to second that. He was very excited about the mowing contract.
Fantastic. So we'll move it by Councillor Young and Councillor
That's what he said in my. He's just whispered in my ear.
He's happy to second it. Sure. So fantastic. So we'll open with Councillor.
Thanks, Chair. Well, this is a quickly delivered report. I think the resolution of council to receive this or to order this report come forward was only made in May, so it's pretty good timing, good turnaround, and we thank the Executive General Manager and his staff for that. I think we've all come through the summer of hell with obviously the Christmas Day storm and then the floods, but the impacts on our community were very significant, both in terms of the mood of the people and the impacts that they were feeling every day, and that they were seeing in front of them with long grass and trees down and broken branches and all sorts of disarray. And through that, I'm sure we've all lodged lots of complaints or requests formally through the channels on behalf of our community. I know my office has probably put in hundreds. And some of those have been very legitimately based, like where there's a complaint about a park not being mowed. And some of them were a little bit sort of like a bit precious, I'll admit. But the response from the staff has been fantastic all the way through. I really want to take my cap off to get the title right, the General Manager of Infrastructure Maintenance, which is an enormous role. Michael, thank you for your excellent support and service, and also want to recognise Dominique. I mean, these are big roles. We're talking about millions of square metres of cutting every rotation, and there's, I don't know how many rotations a year. I think it's 13 in some places. 18 rotations per annum. So it's just an enormous task, and all the eyes are on the mowers, all the eyes are on the grass and on the standard of our parks, which we love. So the responses I've had from the staff have been fabulous, and that includes the technical officers who go out and make evaluations and encourage the contractors to do a better job. But what we've got today in front of us is a refinement of our existing standards and the level of service that we expect and the accountability of the contractors that we will engage over the next 3 years. And it is a refinement, and I'm glad we've got the technical expertise to guide us and bring us a report that identifies very clear and deliberate improvements to the way things will be managed going forward, and I'm thankful for that. I think the outcomes will be evident to us all. Grass cutting costs a hell of a lot of money, and we want it to be a good product, and I'm sure that we'll have those outcomes and results in the future. Thanks, Chairman. I encourage the support of the motion.
I'm so excited about moving this recommendation that I tried to, even though I'm not on the committee. This has been a real concern for residents of Division 6 and no doubt for residents across the city. What I'm really pleased about, and quite honestly, you've surpassed my expectations on what you would be able to do with the contracts, but it's those practical changes you've proposed for our contracts, which is, going to be very clear whether they've met KPIs or not. and really addressing the issues that residents have raised with us over the last few months. So thank you very much for that good work, and really looking forward to it getting into practice and communicating more of it to our residents, and also for our residents to kind of work with our teams as well and realise, look, if you're playing around in a dog park with your dog, that mower can't come back another day because you're there, and maybe just for 10 minutes you get out of the way and things like that. So thanks again.
Anyone else like to speak for? Against? Well, I'd like to just offer my thank you to the team. I think this year we've seen a lot of challenges with the weather. And I also want to thank the community as well, because we do go through a lot of times where we have wet weather in our parks. It's challenging for our contractors and our staff to mow and maintain those areas. So the residents have worked with us, but we have noticed our current contract needs to be improved. And what this does is improve our qualities of our parks moving forward and ensures the contractors are kept accountable as well. So I encourage everyone to support this motion. So we'll take the vote. All in favour? Against? Carry. Fantastic. Thank you.